The coffee pot was still gurgling when I heard Ida's strange, sloshing sound that didn't belong in my quiet suburban cul-de-sac. I was on a video call with my buddy Tom, a guy who's been my partner in a few harebrained schemes over the years. "Hold up, Tom," I said, leaning toward my office window. Either a water pipe just sprang a leak, or my backyard's about to audition for Noah's Arkansas. Tom's face flickered on my screen, all pixels and confusion. "What's going on, Jim?" he asked. I squinted outside and felt my jaw drop. "My driveway," I said, barely believing my own words, "is now a swimming pool for very ambitious fish." I ended the call and bolted to the front door, yanking it open. The sight hit me like a punch. My driveway, the only paved path from my house to the outside world, was a muddy, churning lake. Water crept up my front lawn, threatening the marigolds I'd planted last spring to keep the peace with the neighborhood aesthetic. And there, standing on her immaculate lawn like a villain from a bad HOA sitcom, was Margaret, president of the Willow Creek Homeowners Association, my personal nemesis. Arms folded, she wore a smirk that could curdle milk. Her two massive lawn sprinklers, usually busy keeping her grass a blinding shade of green, were now aimed straight at my property. The community culvert, meant to handle stormwater runoff between our yards, was suspiciously clogged. "Margaret," I shouted, wading into what used to be my pristine lawn. The water was ice-cold around my ankles. "What in God's name are you doing?" She turned, her smile sharpening like a knife. "Just adjusting my sprinklers, James," she said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. "And clearing out that culvert. Seems it was full of your junk. Funny how water flows when you manage it properly, isn't it?" "My junk," I snapped. "That culvert was clear yesterday. I checked it after the rain. You've flooded my only way out." The water was now at my calves, swirling like a lazy river. Margaret tilted her head, feigning innocence. "Is that my problem, James? Maybe you should have thought twice before breaking Rule 12, Section C, Paragraph 2 of the HOA bylaws: no visible vehicle maintenance." She waved a manicured hand toward my attached garage, where I'd been tinkering with my pet project, the gator, yesterday. The garage door was open for maybe an hour to air out the paint fumes. "You're flooding my property over an open garage door?" I asked, my voice thick with disbelief. "Rules are rules," she said, that smirk back in full force. "This might take days to drain." "Such a pity." I stood there, soaked and fuming, as her sprinklers kept gushing. My car was trapped in the garage, marooned like a ship in a storm. Fixing the driveway would take weeks, and Margaret would probably slap me with fines and lawyer fees while cackling. But then, a grin crept across my face. I glanced at my detached garage, hidden at the back of my lot, the one I built for my projects, the one housing the gator. Years ago, I bought a beat-up, six-wheeled ATV chassis from a scrapyard. It was a wreck, but I saw potential. Hundreds of hours went into welding, wiring, and tweaking it into something special: amphibious, tough as nails, ready for anything. "Just in case," I told Tom, who laughed and called me nuts. "Who needs an amphibious ATV in suburban Ohio?" Turns out I did. Margaret was still gloating, probably drafting her victory email to the HOA board. She didn't see me stride toward the garage. The doors creaked open, revealing the gator in all its rugged glory. It wasn't sleek, but it was a beast olive green, with a twin-cylinder engine I'd tuned last weekend and watertight seals I'd double-checked. I climbed in, the smell of grease and gasoline like an old friend. The engine roared to life, shaking the quiet cul-de-sac. I flipped switches on the custom dashboard. Bilge pump, check. Propeller, ready. Then I hit the gas. The gator lurched forward, bouncing over the lawn toward the muddy lake Margaret had created. She turned, phone to her ear, likely reporting my violations. Her eyes widened as the gator hit the water with a splash. For a moment, it hesitated. Then I engaged the propeller, and the wheels tucked up. The gator churned forward, not fast, but steady. I steered past Margaret, whose phone slipped from her hand as her jaw dropped. I gave her a mock salute. "Rule 12, Section whatever," I muttered, grinning. "Kiss my amphibious tailpipe." Mrs. Larson from across the street peeked through her blinds, eyes like dinner plates. The gator wasn't just my escapee, it was a statement. I cruised through the flooded street, leaving a wake like a speedboat. Dog walkers froze, and a kid on a bike toppled over in shock. I pulled up next to the mailman, who was stuffing flyers into a box. "Morning," I said, cheerful as ever. Looks like rain, huh? He stared at the gator, then at me. You got a permit for that? He stammered. For what? I replied, navigating my own personal lake. It's exclusive, you know. He shook his head and went back to his route, probably rethinking his career. I headed to the hardware store for a pump and some hose, parking the gator between a minivan and a pickup. A crowd gathered, phones out, snapping pics. I could already see Willow Creek flood trending. Back home, a police cruiser sat on the grass strip between my moat and Margaret's driveway. Officers Daniels and Brooks were there, listening to Margaret's shrill complaints. Daniels, the younger cop, was fighting a grin. Brooks, older and weary, looked like he'd seen too many HOA wars. Officers, Margaret screeched as I approached, lugging my pump. This maniac drove that thing through my prize roses. That was a lie. I'd swerved to avoid her flowers, though I might have grazed a bush. Officers, I said calmly. She flooded my driveway because I left my garage door open. I used the only vehicle that could handle her little ocean. Daniels glanced at the gator, then the flood. So, ma'am, you flooded his property? He asked Margaret. Brooks sighed, muttering, another day in Willow Creek. Margaret insisted I'd violated bylaws, but the cops weren't buying it. They couldn't arrest her for sprinkler sabotage, but they warned her about property damage and took notes. Daniels circled the gator, muttering, nice rig. You build it. Yup, I said, proud as a parent. The cops left, advising us to work it out like adults. Fat chance, with Margaret's vendetta. I called a plumber, Hank, who arrived and sized up the scene. Well, damn, he said, eyeing the gator and Margaret's drone, now buzzing overhead like an angry wasp. This lady's got more surveillance than Fort Knox. I can fix this, but it'll cost yond it's worth it for the show. Tom pulled up in his pickup, grinning like a kid at Christmas. Jim, you broke her, he said, dodging puddles. An amphibious ATV? I said it was a dumb idea, but I'm thrilled to be wrong. We planned a long-term fix, regrade the yard, add a French drain, maybe a berm to block Margaret's waterworks. Hank suggested a landscaper, Ellie, who hated HOAs and had a knack for defensive gardening. Over the next few days, Hank's crew cleared the culvert. Surprise, Surpreseno debris of mine. Instead, they found branches, a paving stone from Margaret's garden, and a ceramic gnome Gus matching the army of gnomes in her yard. My security cameras caught it all, including Margaret stuffing the culvert at dawn. Ellie arrived, a powerhouse with a laugh that could wake hibernating bears. So, the HOA which tried to drown you, she boomed. You want Fort Knox with flowers? I'm in. Ellie's crew built a stone retaining wall, compliant with town codes, lined with thorny, flood-proof plants. Margaret's drone hovered constantly, filming our unauthorized work. She shouted complaints about soil pH and slug migration, but Ellie clapped back. These are native plants, lady. Do your homework before you slander my daisies. Neighbors started rallying. Mrs. Thompson accidentally soaked Margaret with her sprinklers. Old Mr. Carter gave Ellie's crew a thumbs up. The showdown came at the HOA meeting. Margaret, in a power suit, presented blurry drone footage of the gator, calling me a menace. I took the podium with a PowerPoint Tom helped me build. Exhibit A, I said, showing clear footage of Margaret sabotaging the culvert, Gus the gnome tumbling in. The room gasped. Here's Gus, post-rescue. I continued, showing the soggy gnome. Unless he's a stunt double for Margaret's lawn army, this was sabotage. I shared Hank's report, Ellie's permitted plans, and municipal codes on water diversion. Margaret sputtered, but the neighbors piled on. Mrs. Jenkins revealed a gnome in her bird bath after a paint dispute. Others shared tales of Margaret's petty tyranny dog poop, threatening notes, slashed tires. Her reign collapsed in a wave of resentment. The meeting ended with a motion to oust her as HOA president. Weeks later, my yard was pristine, the wall a masterpiece. Margaret's sprinklers couldn't touch me. Officers Daniels and Brooks returned when she complained about my monstrosity of a wall. My engineer, Mr. Peterson, presented permits and plans, proving it was legal and beneficial. Daniels whispered to me, her complaints are piling up. The town's noticing, and there's talk of a recall petition. Keep your paperwork tight. Victory was sweet. My driveway was dry, the gator gleaming in its garage. One Saturday, I took it for a spine of victory lap through Willow Creek. Margaret was yanking weeds, her hair a mess, refusing to look at me. I waved cheerfully. The neighborhood felt calm, the gator a silent guardian. Months later, Tom helped me add a winch to the gator. "Any more floods from Margaret the Menace?" he asked. "Not a drop," I said. "The HOA's getting a makeover, and Gus is in the town hall's lost and found, tagged as evidence." Tom laughed. "You're a legend, Jim. The guy who beat an HOA tyrant with a boat on wheels." Life in Willow Creek is peaceful now. The gator, my six-wheeled hero, stands ready. And I've got a feeling it's earned its place as the neighborhood's protector of dry driveways and common sense. What do you think? Was I justified in taking on Margaret's flood with my gator, or should I have played by her rules? Have you faced a bully or injustice in your own life, maybe an overzealous HOA or a petty neighbor? Share your thoughts in the comments. Let's hear where you stand on standing up to tyranny, big or small.